What's going on, guys? Jacob here. Welcome to Robski Football, and this is my first video on this channel. And today, as you probably have guessed by my top, by the title, and probably by the thumbnail, we're going to be talking about England. Now, going into these two international friendlies against Uruguay and Japan, the big headline was the 36-man squad that Thomas Tuchel announced. Obviously, this has been done before. It's not like he's reinventing the wheel here. This was more so, rather than the results of these games, this was more so for the individuals that were on or are on the periphery of the squad. Now, players such as Ben White, players such as Kobe Mainoo, James Garner, even Harry Maguire, those guys were obviously on the periphery, are on the periphery of getting into the squad. And we're now, today, going to be going into the games as a whole, Uruguay and Japan, going into the details, going into what actually happened and who are the winners, who are the losers coming out of these games leading up to the World Cup in less than 2 months' time. Now, after these games against Uruguay and Japan, I think a lot of the media are talking about the results. Now, of course, it's easy to get carried away with a draw to a lowly Uruguay team who found it pretty difficult of late, especially after the bust-up with Suarez and Marcelo Bielsa. And then on the flip side, against a Japan team who really have been doing pretty well over the last couple of years, going through their Asian qualification with no real hash marks against their record, and they are still in the top 20 in the FIFA World Rankings. For the most part, from an England perspective, the results weren't really what mattered. Of course, it was more so about the performances of the players. More so, the performances of the players that are on the periphery of the squad. Now, it's of course apparent that Thomas Tuchel has got his foundation of a team. He's got the spine. He's got Jordan Pickford. He's got Mark Gahey, centre-back. We've got Declan Rice. Even Elliot Anderson could be considered in that spine now, because him and Declan Rice work very well indeed. And then obviously up top we have Harry Kane. Now, of course, the guys on the periphery, this is what this set of fixtures, that was really important for these players on the periphery, such as Kobe Mainoo, such as Harry Maguire, even though I think he's had a very solid season at Manchester United, such as Jed Spence, players as well like Dominic Solanke, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, James Garner. Now, it must be said that I think these guys, maybe Solanke aside and Jed Spence aside, they've all had sort of purple patch periods over this season. Dominic Calvert-Lewin had a spree of five or six games throughout the winter period in the Premier League where he couldn't stop scoring. James Garner, I think especially over the last 2 months, has had a purple patch in an Everton team where he's been an integral part in that midfield. Shooting Everton up the league table, potentially looking at a European spot at the end of the season. Now, those are the guys where the performances were really, or rather the magnifying glass was on them to see what their performances would be like. Now, first of all, I will talk about James Garner. Now, I'm a Manchester United fan. I did see James Garner obviously coming up through the ranks in Manchester at United, and he didn't really get a look in. Now, I did feel quite sorry for him at the time, but he's done, he's come on leaps and bounds throughout his loans that he's gone to. Obviously, his transfer to Everton, and the last couple of years, he's really come on leaps and bounds as a playmaker, but also as a box-to-box midfielder. On the flip side, we have, a player in Kobe Mainoo who, at the start of the season, he looked like an absolute long shot to get into this England team. Under Ruben Amorim, he was, frozen out of the squad to be replaced by Bruno Fernandes, who should never have been asked to play in that 6 or 8 role. For me, Kobe Mainoo, he should be the spine of Manchester United's team. Now, has his performances in an England shirt really kind of mirrored that? Should he have the same responsibility in an England team? Now, I think Elliot Anderson obviously comes into that conversation. He's been just solid at Nottingham Forest over this last season. He's a defensive workhorse. It's easy to see that him and Declan Rice really have a very good connection, especially as Declan Rice has progressed as a player since moving to Arsenal, especially over the last couple of seasons with Mikel Arteta kind of asking him to push forward a lot more and getting into those channels. But he can also do that number 6 role as well. Elliot Anderson and Declan Rice are really what important for this team down that centre spine of the midfield and the team as a whole. Going down into the striking position, the forwards. Now, Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Dominic Solanke. There's obviously a toss-up here of who is the third best striker. Now, in my opinion, behind Harry Kane, you would probably consider Ollie Watkins as the second in command. Now, Ollie Watkins has been a bit hit and miss this season. Of course, of late, over the last couple of months, he has been scoring a few more goals than in previous months this season. However, I don't think he is a guy that can lead the line for England, for 90 minutes. Should Harry Kane go down injured, should he get suspended or whatever happens, I don't think there's a lot of confidence in Ollie Watkins to lead the line. Now, I could be proven wrong, and I would be glad to be proven wrong. But on the flip side of that is, what other options can we bring in to that number 9 position? Now, they don't normally, we might not even have a number 9 to bring in. We may just go with Ollie Watkins and Harry Kane, and then also bring in the likes of Anthony Gordon, who can obviously more so play on left wing, but can play at the number 9 role. Marcus Rashford, of course, even for Manchester United a few years back was playing in some parts, or can play in some parts down the middle, so he would be a good option as well. Overall, I think Marcus Rashford has played pretty well across both games. He looked dangerous in moments. As always with Marcus Rashford, if you give him the ball with his back to the sideline, running at a right back, he's going to 9 times out of 10 create chances for the team. Now, that's why I think he should be a nailed-on starter at that left wing position. If you have Bukayo Saka, which it looks like is likely, on the right wing with Harry Kane up top, I think those 3 are without question the best front 3 that England has at this moment in time. Should anything go wrong with the balance of that, should any one of those 3 become injured, that's a different story. And that's where I feel Thomas Tuchel, after the game against Japan, was talking about the miss, how big of a miss Harry Kane was to that squad, or would he be, should he not be fit in time, or at any part throughout the World Cup. So that is obviously one of the major talking points that will be talked about, I'm sure, end to end going into the next couple of months before the World Cup. Now, the first thing I want to talk about on my next topic is the defence. Mark Gahey, Ezri Konsa, they have been regarded, at least by Thomas Tuchel, for the most part throughout qualifications, as the starting 2 centre-backs. I don't want to come across as a guy that's wearing red tinted glasses, as you can tell. Sorry, I pointed on the wrong way. As you can tell by the frame here, I'm a Man United fan. Now, I hold Harry Maguire, especially through the journey that he's been through at Manchester United since his transfer for huge money. He was obviously given the captain's armband by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He then obviously got it taken off of him, and he's come back leaps and bounds. He's proven that, yes, he's not obviously the most mobile player, but my God, can he defend? He will put his face and his head anywhere, but he's also a very smart footballer, especially with the ball. On the flip side, I don't think Ezri Konsa is that guy. Now, Ezri Konsa, don't get me wrong, is a quality centre-back, but do I think the balance with him and Mark Gahey works? No. I think Harry Maguire and Mark Gahey work pretty well indeed, purely because Mark Gahey is obviously the one that's a bit more mobile. He can help cover Harry Maguire for when Maguire goes up for headers from goal kicks, for example, that kind of thing. But I think that the balance between Konsa and Gahey, personally for me, isn't there. And that's why I'd like to see perhaps Harry Maguire starting at centre-back for England. I think he's shown time and time again, especially with Gareth Southgate through the Euros, through the World Cup that he's played at for England, that he will show up on the biggest stage when it matters, and he will put in a performance. He will always be a 7 out of 10 player, especially this Harry Maguire over the last 3 or 4 years. What I mean by a 7 out of 10 player is obviously that Harry Maguire, at least over the past few, 3 or 4 seasons for Man United, and also in an England shirt at the last few major tournaments, has been Mr. Consistent. I think I can't remember, at least, over the past 3 or 4 seasons, like I said, a time where I had that feeling whenever, Harry Maguire is being played the ball, he has the ball, or if he's, getting kind of attacked upon by an opposition attacker. I've never been very nervous, as I was, when he first joined Man United. He's come on in terms of, he's grown in that stature of becoming a Man United player, a proper player who, shows the values, respects the club. You never see him, albeit aside from the Greece episode, you never see him in the headlines. He's always, supportive of the manager. He always talks well of the hierarchy of the coaching staff. He's never one to cause any issues. Besides that, I think he's been a tremendous player and a tremendous servant for England. And I think in this tournament, which I would have to guess would be probably his last, if not maybe has a slight chance at getting into the next Euros tournament, he should be on the plane, come what may. Obviously, when we look at the centre backs that we have available, Ezri Konsa, Mark Gahey, Maguire, Dan Burn, and John Stones. Now, the latter, of course, ideally, we'd love to have John Stones 100% fit, if not close to 100% fitness, because, when on their day, he is probably the best centre back we have at this time. Now, obviously, over the last kind of couple of seasons, he's been plagued by injuries. It's been hard to see what kind of player John Stones is, but he has played here and there for Manchester City over this past season. And, we're hoping, I guess, as England fans, that we see the best possible version of John Stones available to England, because on his day, he is probably our best centre-back defensive player. So, in that regard, I will pose the question, do we take all five, Dan Burn, Konsa, Gahey, Stones or Maguire, or do we bring four? And out of those four, who misses out? And of course, I think when it boils down to it, if John Stones is fit, it's Dan Burn or Harry Maguire, which is it's a toss-up for me. Maybe I'm biased, but I would say Harry Maguire. Dan Burn, again, he can play on the left side as well as centre-half, so he does provide that option there. It remains to be seen, and let's see what Thomas Tuchel picks and what his decisions are over the next few months, especially going into a critical period for both Newcastle and Manchester United. Now, on the right and left side of this defensive line, we have Reece James, Reece James is, I think, probably as a whole, as a general right back, is probably the best we have. Now, the question on this side is, of course, who covers him. Now, in this squad for the Uruguay and Japan friendlies, we had Tino Livramento, we had Jed Spence, both of which can play on the right and the left sides. But are they really up to the task of being a defensive cover in a major tournament if Reece James does go down? Now, of course, there's one name that we haven't mentioned in all of this, is Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, of course, a lot of things have been said in the media, especially since this 36-man squad came out. A lot of things in the media about linking, Tuchel with a said party related to Trent Alexander-Arnold, and we won't go further into that. But should that be the case, that is why he's not picked. It's a sad time. It's a sad time if that is actually the case. Me, for one, again, I'm a Man United fan. I've been one my whole life. I've hated Liverpool since the day I had my first breath, and I can't fathom why Trent Alexander-Arnold wouldn't be in this team. I think when you look at him as a player, yes, defensively he has his question marks. Yes, maybe his work rate is sometimes, in question as well, but technically he is probably one of the best passers we have, available to pick. Probably, the best dead ball specialist that we've had since David Beckham, I would argue. And for me, in a tournament scenario, you need those specialist players when it matters. Now, I'm not saying for 1 minute that Trent deserves to start at right back should he be picked, which looks unlikely. But you need him for those specialist games. The games where if it gets the 80th minute and we don't look like we've created a chance or a clear-cut chance, and we have, we throw on our taller players to kind of maybe do an Arsenal and get 6 set pieces, he is the one that we would want delivering that ball. Now, Reece James does have a good delivery on him himself, but if he's not available, I believe Trent Alexander-Arnold, without a question, should be the second in command in that spot. Now, on the left side is, I think we're in a very healthy standing. We've got a player in Lewis Hall who has come on very well indeed, especially over this last kind of half of the Premier League season and also the Champions League, where he's definitely shown that he can play against the top players. In moments in the tie in the Champions League against Barcelona, he looks like he had Lamine Yamal's number, at least for probably the first leg, less so for the second leg, but he at least can tell himself that he has played against that quality of player and can defend against that quality of player. And obviously on the other side of it, we have Nico O'Reilly, who in part, is regarded as a left back just purely from how Pep Guardiola has used him at City, obviously moving into the centre mids and kind of driving forward from there, but that's the system City play. And this is obviously Thomas Tuchel's England is a totally different system. Now, does Nico O'Reilly warrant that starting spot at left back? From a personal attributes and kind of, I guess, all-round season performance, I'd say yes, absolutely. But in a tournament where we are going to come up against, some great teams, hopefully if we make it past the groups, of course, but even in the knockout stages, we're playing Ghana, who have obviously Antoine Semenyo. They've got dangerous players on that side. Even against Germany, Ghana in some regard caused Germany a lot of problems, like with Abdul Fatawu from Leicester as well. So, we need to have that discussion, or at least that kind of idea in our heads that Nico O'Reilly might not be that starting left back for us, just purely because of his, I guess, general development. He's already shown he can play in midfield, but is he ready to be playing in that centre mid spot or in the middle of the park? I don't think so. Now, before I go into, I guess, my biggest topic of this video, let's go into the goalkeepers. Now, Jordan Pickford, of course, tremendous servant throughout the Southgate era for England. He's obviously a dead certain in net. Now, of course, number 2 and number 3, as it is with modern football, we're bringing in 3 goalkeepers nowadays. Dean Henderson, I think, has had a great season, not just this season for Crystal Palace, but also last season, winning the FA Cup with them. I think whether it's number 2 or number 3 for him, should definitely be on the plane. And then, of course, I think the question mark against number 3 is James Trafford or Aaron Ramsdale. For me, I think James Trafford should go over Ramsdale, purely because James Trafford, I believe, will be England's number 1 in a few years' time. Aaron Ramsdale, for me, he's been obviously covering in parts and playing ahead of Nick Pope in certain games, but for me, I don't see Aaron Ramsdale being on the plane. I think James Trafford, just purely because, even for the fact that he's a young player and he's gaining experience, I think it'd be a great kind of moment for us to bring a player like him on the plane, just to be around the guys, obviously helping in training and prepare, but just to soak in the atmosphere and be like, it will be you in 4 years, in 8 years' time. So he is the one I think we should bring in that third goalkeeping spot. Now, moving on to the, I guess, nitty-gritty, as you can say, back in England, the number 10 position. Now, the number 10 position, for the last 4 or 5 years, but especially from the start of Thomas Tuchel's tenure, has been a big topic of discussion. We have players such as Cole Palmer, Phil Foden, Eberechi Eze, Morgan Rogers, Jude Bellingham. The list goes on. But those few guys specifically. Now, but ahead of Rice and Anderson, we've got to have a player that, first of all, not only has great prowess when it comes to connecting the second line to the offensive line, but also breaking those lines with runs, but also on the defensive side. Now, when I talk about this, my first thought is the goal against Japan, which we conceded. Now, Cole Palmer, for all his plaudits, for all the flowers that he's been given over the last few seasons, since moving to Chelsea more so, he is a bit lacklustre when it comes to defensive work rate. Now, of course, in a player like Cole Palmer, that is kind of a situation that you digest because of the attacking player that he is. Can we afford to have that in an England team that I think the pressure is on probably more than ever? I don't think so. I think a player such as a Jude Bellingham, I think he's regarded as probably our best player all round in the squad in total. He should obviously be that number 10 spot in the starting 11. Now, obviously, looking to the side and who, if he goes down injured or if he is suspended or whatever happens, who is that backup option to that number 10? Now, of course, we have players like Eberechi Eze, Phil Foden. Phil Foden, for me, I don't think he should be on the plane. Now, that is probably my biggest statement of this video, purely because I don't think we can go off of what he has done in a England shirt, since he's been playing for the senior team. His drop off since the kind of last couple of years has been evident. Now, whether that's been down to him as a teenager at 18 playing 30, 40 games, 50 games, and kind of coming to terms with potential burnout could be a reason as to his drop off. Now, of course, we could go into that in a different video, but from the surface level, from what us as fans have seen, Phil Foden hasn't hit the heights at all, or near the heights at all, of what we expect him, but also of what we expect as starting or even a backup number 10 for England. Eberechi Eze, obviously since his big summer move in last year to Arsenal, he's hit the mark here and there. Has he been consistent? Maybe not, but that's obviously more so to do with the team selection on the Arsenal side of things. He has obviously turned up in both London derbies and played extremely well. I think he's a great option, but do I think he's probably the best option that we have backing up to Jude Bellingham? Again, probably not. For the most part, I will say that Morgan Rogers is probably the guy, if not starting over Jude Bellingham, he's probably the guy to back up Bellingham in that position. Morgan Rogers, I think for me, if he's not at a major European club, and I don't mean any disrespect to Aston Villa in that side on that point, but if he doesn't end up at a big major team such as a Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, the list goes on. If he doesn't go to one of those teams in the next 2 or 3 seasons, I'd be very surprised. I think he's a player of high quality. I think Pep Guardiola and the City hierarchy made a huge mistake letting him go to Middlesbrough, and then obviously Middlesbrough letting him go on to Aston Villa. I think Morgan Rogers is one hell of a player, but also one hell of a player that we can rely on. From a set piece standpoint, from chances created, I believe he's probably the second best cam that we have, second best number 10 that we have in the squad, and he should definitely go, no questions asked. Then that question comes up is, okay, Phil Foden, Cole Palmer, Eberechi Eze, who misses out? Because I think with the wingers that we'll bring in, Anthony Gordon, Bukayo Saka, Marcus Rashford, probably Madueke, I think Tuchel likes Madueke a lot. Where does Phil Foden and Cole Palmer fit into those? Which will be a big talking point indeed. Now, moving on to the winners and the losers. Now, for me, these winners and losers don't, this list is just purely for the people or the players that have, exceeded kind of expectations, or rather put in a good account for themselves over the games against Uruguay and Japan. Now, the winners for me were 3 main guys. James Garner. Now, James Garner, I think, again, talking about him like I did earlier at Everton, I think he showed himself as a mature player, especially in that Uruguay game where it was very physical. It was an easy game to lose your head and to kind of almost play against the opposition and rather playing for yourself and the performance and trying to get into this England team. I think he showed a great deal of class, maturity in his performance. I don't think he put too many feet wrong in his performances, and I believe the same kind of idea as James Trafford and bringing him along is that not necessarily you're going to be the guy helping us much in this tournament at the World Cup in the US, but Tuchel can say to him, come on the plane, this won't be you now, but this will be you in 3, 4, 5 years' time. I think he is a player that, will he be a starting 11 player in England in the future, remains to be seen, but I definitely think he'll be there or thereabouts as the years progress. Harry Maguire. Now, I've obviously talked about Harry Maguire at length already. Don't need to say too much more about him. We know what he can do. We know what he's done. And I just think if John Stones isn't available or isn't fully fit, he's got to be, if not starting, the number 3 spot. And I think over the past couple of games, especially against Uruguay, again, against the team that they are, a very physical game, he led the line excellently with a captain's armband on. I think he showed a great deal of class again. And Kobbie Mainoo. I think Kobbie Mainoo, whilst his performances weren't too great overall, I think he didn't, he showed in glimpses that he can play at that level. Now, the guy started in the final against Spain in the Euros, for crying out loud. He's been there. He's only still a young player. He's still developing. He's still got time to grow. Does he get ahead of Anderson? No. Does he get ahead of Rice? Of course, no. Adam Wharton, Kobbie Mainoo, that is the battle that I want to see for that third spot, that third centre mid spot. Also, obviously, throwing him in there is James Garner as well. So that battle will be interesting to see who comes out on top. Now, obviously, Adam Wharton had a knock over these past couple of games, so it remains to be seen if he, will put in a stake. Obviously, in terms of quality, we know what he's got, but over this next couple of months for the season, will he pip ahead of Mainoo or will Mainoo pip ahead of him? It remains to be seen, and that'll be a battle that I'll be keeping a close eye on indeed. Moving on to the losers. Now, probably, as you can probably tell by what we've the direction of the conversation here in terms of the number 10 spot, Phil Foden is one of the losers I've recognised here. Now, Phil Foden, for whatever we can say about him that has gone on this season, he, with reason, has been regarded as one of the best technical players, since Rooney, since Gascoigne. Those type of players where it's a street kind of environment, like he doesn't care about what's around him. He will take on anyone who's bigger than him and he will dribble past you. But have we seen that version of Phil Foden over this last year, even over this past year and a half to 2 years? I don't think so. And for me, I think it's not easy to see, but I think it's recognisable that a potential burnout is the issue. Now, not burnout from the schedule of the last year, but more so since he's been, in the City setup in the first team. He's played a hell of a lot of minutes playing, going deep into title run-ins to Champions League wins, FA Cups and Carabao Cups, even at major tournaments for England. But he hasn't really hit the heights of what we have expected from him over this last 18 months. And, it's evident to see from who we've got in the number 10 position in terms of competition, such as Cole Palmer, such as Jude Bellingham and Morgan Rogers, that he is now falling down that pecking order, unfortunately. Now, again, as a Man United fan, would I love to see the best version of Phil Foden, again, for both City and England? Absolutely. Without question of doubt, he would be, if he hits those heights again, hopefully, over the next few months or even going ahead after the World Cup, will he be in the England squad and hits those heights? Absolutely. And I would love to see him being at that standard yet again. And then the final two. Now, Cole Palmer. Cole Palmer is one that, he's a player that I'd love to watch. Going forward with the ball, I think has a great vision for connecting players, especially the little balls that he dinks over from, one side of the penalty area to the other, dinks them over the defenders. I think he's just a master at that, almost like a Bruno Fernandes in that regard. but his defensive work lets him down tremendously. And we saw that obviously with the goal that we conceded against Japan, where he lost the ball and we were kind of hit on the counter by the Japanese going forward. And Cole Palmer didn't do himself a great deal of justice in that regard when there's so much competition for the number 10 spot as it is. Now, finally, Dominic Solanke. Now, I've gone into the forwards and the number 9 options a bit. I could also include Dominic Calvert-Lewin in this. I don't think either of them did themselves any kind of positivity or positive kind of movements in terms of staking their claim. I don't think, between those two guys, I think it was a battle for who's going to, in Tuchel's mind, who's going to take that third striker spot if there is. Or versus that, do we rely upon Anthony Gordon and Marcus Rashford, who can also play on the left wing, to also be options behind Harry Kane and Ollie Watkins for that number 9 position as well? So that obviously remains to be seen. We will see what goes on in the next few weeks, and of course I'll be trying to cover as much as I can about England, about the run-in for both the Premier Leagues, the Champions Leagues, and obviously the preparation for the World Cup. And that is it for my video today. If you are new here, please don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, all of that. Please do comment as well. I'd love to connect with everyone that watches this video. Give me your thoughts, your feelings, where you think England are going to make it or how far they're going to make it in this tournament. And I will speak to you soon.